Alright, I want to talk about some Janome software that you may not know came with your machine. So with my 15,000, MC 15,000 came with Horizon Link software, and I bought the machine as a demo, and the dealer upgraded me to Horizon Link 1.31, but I believe even the main Horizon Link that came with my machine had all of these tools available to me. So Stitch Composer is where you can create original stitch patterns that can be stitched out on the machine just like any other decorative stitch. And it also came with a scaled down version. If you go into EMB Link, and this is going to be in my way, you go to, I believe, Editing Embroidery Designs. You also get a scaled down version of the, it's now called AcuStitch when you buy it as a separate or a standalone software. But they gave us this little sample of that software that we were able to do certain things. So you can like go in and choose, you can make a line or a circle. That's all we had in the scaled down version. And you could go in and choose one of the stitches that they gave us. And there were several samples of stitches that were similar to the ones on your machine. Not all of the stitches on your machine, but a lot of them. So I'm just not going to spend too much time on this, but you do already have the software if your machine came with Horizon Link. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and close that. Alright, so this is what my version of Stitch Composer looks like. So if you install the Stitch Composer software to your machine, you can go to the Janome site, the global site, and download version 2.4 of Stitch Composer, and you will end up with a lot of extra settings and things that were not available on the original one. It's still very similar, and that one doesn't cost anything to upgrade. And you can also download the AcuStitch version 2.3, which if you have bought the standalone version, it's probably version 1 point something, which in my case I just recently purchased it because I wanted to be able to have all of these, all these circles and squares and shapes, and there's more shapes in here that you can apply stitches to. So I wanted more features, and I bought it from Premier Stitching just recently. And so you're still able to get the standalone version of AcuStitch from a dealer, Janome dealer, and then you can go to the Janome global site and upgrade it for free to this version. But you also already have to have the software installed on your machine. So we're going to start with AcuStitch today. So if you don't have digitizing software, you can still make some pretty neat designs just using decorative stitches. So both of these came with all of those stitches that if you go up to, let's see, where did I store them? Janome gives us applique, decorative, heirloom, long. It's a lot of the same stitches that are already on your machine. There's a list of them. But I wanted to take a stitch that was on a little machine that I had bought at Walmart, and I really liked the stitch, and it wasn't on my Janome machine. There was one similar to it, but what I did was I stitched the little, on the little machine, I stitched on a piece of fabric the actual stitch, and then I scanned it on a scanner and cropped it down to, you can also just snap a picture of it, and I cropped it down to just one pattern size. And it's easier to work with if you do crop the photo, but if you don't have any kind of editing software, you might not be able to do that. But the paint program that comes with your Windows computer, you can crop images. So let's go to Stitch Composer, and then I'm going to go to the View menu and choose a backdrop image. And there's my little cropped stitch. And in my case, it already came out the size I wanted to be, because I measured my actual stitch out, and when you're looking at Stitch Composer, every one of these big squares here with the dark lines, that's only a millimeter. So I don't know what percentage this thing is blown up, but you have to think about this being very tiny right here. So if you look here, we have the 0 line, and this dark line here is your 0 going this way, and this dark line is your 0 going out that way. So these negative numbers here is the right side of your foot on your machine, and the bottom with the positive numbers is the left side of your foot. So we're not really looking at it as, you know, as it stitches out. So we have more designing room if it's oriented this way. You can also change your view up here if you want the stitch out to be here on the bottom in this green area. Just all kinds of settings, but I like mine like that because this green area, when I do the play button, it's going to stitch out kind of like I would be viewing it at my sewing machine. Alright, so I want to take the point of this little image and drag it over to this 0 line here on the left, as close as I can get it, because it's just going to give me a guide for drawing my stitches. And I also want to put the center of this thing right on this 0 line. So I'm just left mouse clicking, holding the left mouse button down. When this little mouse cursor turns into that little square, that's when you can grab the picture and move it. If your stitch out or your image didn't come out the size you want it, you can drag these handles and get it to the size that you want it. But in my case, it came out just perfect. Alright, so I've got my image right where I want it. I am going to make it a little transparent so that it'll be easier to see what I'm drawing. And I'm also going to lock it in place. So while I'm clicking on the screen, I'm not going to be clicking on the image. So now I can go back to the home menu, and what I want to point out here is when I was first using this software, and there's some detailed Stitch Composer videos out there where they really go in depth on how to delete and move points and things like that. But the main thing is if you click on point move, it turns kind of orange here, and that lets me know I can just grab a point and start moving it around. If this is not pressed down, you're going to be adding more points. Every time you click, you're going to be adding points. So you can't just come over here and click on that one and try to move it. You're actually adding another point on top of it. And every time you click, it's adding stitches here in your stitch list window. And this stitch list window tells you the exact location of every point. So if someone wanted to make a stitch and send you the instructions on how to make it, they could just print up or just take a screenshot of this stitch list and you would know exactly where to put every single point. So let me just go undo all of that. And also your very first stitch always ends up on the on this vertical 0 line over here. So even if I clicked up here on this 3mm line, my first point's going to come way over here and land on the 0. It has to be on 0. I want my first point to be 0, 0. So back to what I was talking about. If I have, let me just put a couple of points on here. Okay, so I have 1 and 2 here. They're numbered. If I want to move one of these points, I can highlight this tool here. It has to be pressed down, and then I can move that point anywhere I want it. The program will only let me make 5mm long stitches. So on this one, if I tried to save it, it would give me an error message and say that, you know, your stitch is way too long, your machine can't handle that, and we'll fix it for you, and they'll add some points in there to help you fix the length of that stitch. Alright, so let me undo I've got the 1 at the 0, 0, and that's where it is. So I'm fine with that. So what I want to do here, well, let's just start from the beginning. I want my first stitch to be over here on the 0, 0 line. Oops, I got to turn that off. See, I already made a mistake. Now I can lay a point down, and it's showing up here. There's my stitch number 1. So I want to just roughly put some points down. I'm not really concerned about where they are, but I'm just going to make a general drawing of this actual, what I'm calling an arrowhead. And you have to remember that the machine can't jump around and make lines just in any kind of order. It has to draw the stitches with, just like you're drawing on paper, and you're not lifting your pencil from the paper. So you would have to trace out your design to where your pencil never leaves the paper. So that's what we're going to do today. So looking across here diagonal, it's going to be a little bit more than 3 millimeters across, but I've tried the stitch out going halfway and it's just too short for my liking. You can see the original stitch out, the stitches are only about 1 millimeter where the needle penetrates. But I found that when I stitched this one out, it was just too dense for me. So I'm going to go ahead and not put an extra stitch here in the middle, and I'm going to put my second stitch down here. So it gives it a number 2. Now I want to go out to the end of this leg, and that gives it number 3. Now the next leg I want to draw is here. So how do I get there? So I've got to backtrack. So I'm going to click right on top of the 2, and the 2 is going to be hidden behind stitch number 4. And you can see 2 and 4 have the same location. You can see it on your list. So now I'm going to go back to here so that I can make my way out there. So I'm going to click there. I'm going to go out and then back. Go here, out, and back. And then I'm going to go all the way back to the beginning. Then I need to do the mirror image of that on the other side of the foot of the machine. So I'm going to click all the way out to the end here and then do all of these legs. Out, back, down, out, and back, down, out, and back. And then back to the very beginning. So I can go ahead and view it at this point, even though I'm not really finished. And I can turn the grid lines off and I can unshow the image. And that looks pretty good. So at this point I don't need the image anymore, but I do want the grid lines. So I'm going to turn those back on, go back to my home menu, and since nothing is highlighted here, I can continue to add points. So I want to come right up the middle just like the original design, and then when it gets out here it's going to start the new design. And it is usually best to end a design on the same, I don't know if you call this horizontal or vertical because of the way it's oriented, but you want to end on the same line before you start the next stitch. You want to end it on the same line so that if I ended it here, when this stitch is out, it's going to do another little jog down here. Let me just show you. I'm going to put some lock stitches in there and play it out. See this little jog right here? It wants to get back to that 0 line, so it's gonna come back down and start the whole repeat over again. So I'm gonna stop that, do like that, do like that, and I'm gonna make my stitches about 3 millimeters long because again I've already stitched this out and I didn't like the way the stitch was stitching out, so I'm making my stitches a little bit longer. So I'm gonna go out 3 millimeters and then out 3 millimeters, and I'm gonna stop there. So you saw me click on the lock stitch button there. That's the way the program will automatically put in some lock stitches for me, and right now the program does not know where to loop the pattern over and over again. So if I hit the play button here, it's only going to stitch it one time and stop, and then it's going to stitch it one more time and stop, just because I've still got it on play. It doesn't know to repeat this over and over again from this point here. You can go into your highlight button and highlight the stitches where you want your start, loop, and end to be. The loop would be where the pattern loops over and over again. The end point would be the command that you send to the sewing machine when you press the end button. and it'll know this is where she wants to stop. So we're going to complete the whole stitch, and when we get to this point we're going to stop and put, you know, the lock stitches in. But when I'm doing something that's not a monogram, I want to just go ahead and hit this automatic lock stitch, and it's going to put all the points and loops and starts and everything in there that I need. So if you'll watch when I press this, you're going to see some extra stitches come up here and some extra stitches come up here. So it's going to add them at the beginning and the end. So I'm going to go ahead and click it now, and you can see it added these little stitches, and they look like they're really far apart, but when you stitch this out, this is just 0.3 millimeters apart. It's barely a millimeter, and you're not going to be able to see. They're going to look like they're stitching right on top of each other. So now when I hit the play button, it's going to repeat that over and over again. Okay, so now I really don't like where all my points are. We can go to the view menu, turn the grid lines off. Everything's a little jumbled. Let's clean it up. Turn the grid lines back on, go to the home menu. Make sure you highlight the point move, or else you'll be adding more points in every time you click. So make sure that's down the whole time we're doing this. So I want to clean everything up, make it more symmetrical. I want my lines straight. If you want them angled, do that, but I want mine straight. So with the point move turned on, I'm going to start down here on the left side of the foot, and I want the first one to start about 3 millimeters in. And remember, we have 2 stitches stacked on top of each other, so when I move that one down to the 3 millimeter line, you're going to see the one that was underneath it. I want them still on top of each other. I want to drag this one. I want each one of these legs to be 3 millimeters long, and I want this first one to be 3 millimeters in. Alright, so I'm going to just start cleaning up. So I want this staggered, so this number 9 stitch is going to be 1 millimeter less than this number 6, so I'm just going to drag it down to that line, and I'm making these a millimeter, the legs a millimeter apart, which is still pretty close on the machine. So my machine is capable of 9 millimeter stitching, which I think the Stitch Composer, it's 8.8. So you would have to do whatever your Janome machine can handle, but I'm going to be using this in an embroidery design in a minute, so it really doesn't matter if you make it a little bit wider if your intentions is to make it into an embroidery design, because most embroidery designs that we create in AcuStitch is going to be able to handle whatever we do. So alright, so I want to bring this one down to this 2 millimeters in, and the one that goes with it. Then I'm going to bring this one down to that one, and then these 2 stitches on the 1 millimeter line. So all of these are a millimeter apart. So let's take a look at that. That looks good. Alright, so I'm going to start cleaning up the other one. So I'm going back up to this 3 millimeter line, and you'll see that the 16 is a mirror image of the 6 down here, and there's my 17 and 15 on top of each other. The 19 needs to be here. Okay, the 21 is a little bit hidden because we've got these stitch numbers. You can either turn your stitch numbers off if you really want to see that, or you can come over here and highlight number 21 and press the highlight key, and it's going to locate it for you. And then I can move it. I'll turn that highlight off. Alright, something looks jumbled up here, and I think it's because I didn't drag that stitch over. Let's look at this again, and that looks pretty good. Let's stitch it out. Alright, that looks good. Okay, so I'm going to turn my grid lines back on, and I'm going to show you, if you want to make this section longer, there's a couple of ways you can do it. Go back to the home menu, make sure the point move is turned on, and I'm going to select stitches 25 is here. So it's probably 26 is probably located under there because it says that's my loop point where it loops back. Alright, so I'm going to highlight 26 through 30. I'm holding the shift key down, click on 26 and 30. That highlights that whole group, and then I can come up here and press highlight, and it shows they're all kind of stuck together right now. So with my point move command turned on, I can drag these anywhere I want them. I'm just going to put them right back where they are because I like it right there. So that would be if I wanted them way out here and make my stitch longer this way, it would kind of stretch out. See how it stretched it out? So another way you can do that, let's turn all of that off, or turn the highlight off. You can go to your spacing command here, put a little check mark in it, and you can go in and you can actually put a negative number in. Let's do a -3 and see what happens. See, it just stacked them on top of each other. It could even go even farther back and totally overlap if you wanted that. Let's space it out a +3 and it lengthened that. So no matter what you design here, it'll add an extra little stitch here that's going to tell you where the next pattern repeat is going to start. So that's kind of a neat feature. So I'm going to turn that off, and that should have gotten rid of my extra spacing. Sometimes I've had trouble with it, so I'll go back in here and put this on 0 just in case. Alright, and the extra settings. Okay, you can add some comments about what you're personally going to call this design, whatever you need for your own references. The auto stitch width is 8.8. You can tell it I want it to come in at 6 or whatever. That's the default. But let's go ahead and put it at 6 because you may be able to do some editing at the machine to a wider stitch. But right now I have stitched it out at 6 millimeters wide. So let's put it as the auto at 6, and so I should be able, the max is unchangeable. The program does not let you change that number. So I should be able to adjust it at the machine. If you don't have the ability to adjust the way you want to at your machine, come back here and check your extra settings, okay? So the minimum stitch length obviously is 0, but you can set that to where it's not possible to make it less than a certain amount, and you will be limiting what you can tell the machine to do. I want my maximum stitch length to be 5. It's not going to look good if I start stretching it out that far, but I do like to have a little playroom in here, so when I get to the machine I'm going to put it at the max so that I can play with it. The auto is going to come in at 2.5. I could change that to 3 if I wanted, because that's kind of how I designed it, but that one I don't fool with that much. Alright, so you can change the maximum machine speed that it will stitch out at. What we're doing right now is a loop, because it just loops over and over and over again. You can change it to just a monogram and it will only stitch once. You can tell it where the initial needle position is going to be and whether you're using foot A or F. Foot F is mostly what you're going to use, because if your design is pretty dense, you're going to want the foot F because it has an extra space under the middle of the foot to where the stitches fit under it pretty good. So I'm going to say OK and go ahead and save this as, let's just put today's date, and I'll know which one we're playing with today. Alright, so the main reason, here's why I wanted to use Stitch Composer. I want to go into AcuStitch, which is embroidery digitizing using decorative stitches. And again, you can apply any of these shapes, but we're going to just do a circle. Also, when you first set up your software, you want to go in and tell it what machine you're using so that you'll have the correct hoop sizes to play with. I'm just going to use this 230 by 230 and go in and choose a circle. Alright, so let's go in and choose the stitch that I just made. I don't know where I saved it. There it is right there. Click open, and it'll come in at 15 millimeters radius, which is only 30 millimeter circle. So I have the capability with this hoop to do 230. So I am going to, let's just make this 60 radius. And if I zoom in on that, you can see my little stitches are really close together. So I always go in and change the spacing. Let's just make it 3 millimeters apart. And you can see sometimes you're not going to like the way the circle starts and ends. Just like if you're using a circular stitch attachment for your sewing machine, you don't always know how close the last two are going to be to each other. So you can mess with all of these settings until it gets the way you want it to be. I think you can do a little fine tuning right there, and you can see it's kind of adjusting the space to where it gets right. Sometimes it'll have a gap if you do that too much. I'm not going to fool with that too much anymore, but when you're doing yours, you can set it the way you want. This is the baseline. The stitches can sit on top of your circle. They can sit right in the middle of your circle line, or they can stitch below. So I usually don't fool with that unless I want a particular spacing. So I'm going to, when I press the convert button, it's going to place the design in my hoop, and it's going to put it in my design list here. At this point, I can go in and choose another stitch to go with it. Let's choose that little leaf there. And well, I want to make that smaller. Let's make it 80. Let's make it bigger. And I have to zoom out so I can see if I like it. I'm going to hit convert, and so that added another layer, and you can just keep doing that. You can also add your own designs that you already own, and I don't want to go searching on my machine, but you can pull in any Jeff design that you already own, put it in the middle. You can add a monogram and that kind of thing. So basically, this is the AcuStitch software in a nutshell. Again, there's videos out there that shows you how to use all these monograms. The ruler work is used just like you would use these shapes over here. There's a lot of shapes available to me that I can add in here. So once this is done here, I can write the design and save it as a Jeff or a Jeff Plus. So let's see. Let's go over here to File, Save. So I can choose the Jeff or the Jeff Plus, give it a name, store it on my hard drive. I can convert it to use with any embroidery machine that does not take the Jeff files, and so on and so forth. So this is a lot of fun to play with, and also to add some stitches that you may not already have on your Janome machine. So it's just really interesting software, and it's not very expensive to get the standalone AcuStitch software, and it gives you a lot of opportunities. You can make coasters and you name it. So have fun.